When I talk to CEOs, a common complaint that I get is that they aren't seeing enough bottoms-up innovation in their companies. Keep watching for some clues on how your company culture might be discouraging innovation. And in the next episode of Indigenus Talks, we evaluate and critique the digital execution of some companies in the health insurance sector. Now, the problem might actually be with your company culture. So today we're going to talk about 10 questions that you must ask to see if your company culture is encouraging innovation or not. Point 1. When people come to work, are they being themselves? Are they bringing their real personalities to work? Or are they just acting out a role as if they're performing for senior management? If they joke around, act a little silly, be themselves, the advantage is that they're more likely to feel comfortable and express themselves and speak more freely. And that's more likely to lead to them suggesting things that are new and innovative for the business. Point 2. Goals versus tasks. Are employees managed by assigning them certain goals that they must figure out ways to reach? Or are they managed on every task that they must perform? If it's the latter and you're monitoring them closely, that doesn't leave much room for innovation. But if they're aiming for a goal, then they're going to find multiple ways to get there, and they're more likely to innovate. Point 3. When is a job done? Is it done when your boss is pleased? Is it done when you've finished a particular project? Or is it done when customers are satisfied, whether internal customers or external customers? This makes a huge difference to innovation. If people are simply thinking about pleasing their bosses or finishing a task at hand, they're not focusing on the end result, which is how customers are reacting and responding to that project. So ultimately, innovation comes from ensuring customer satisfaction and thinking of ways that you can get there rather than focusing on simply getting the task off your task sheet. Point 4. How do you hire? Do you only look for the smartest talent or specific skills? Or do you actually look at criteria such as diversity when you're hiring? There's a lot of talk today about the importance of diversity because it encourages different viewpoints in the workforce, encourages debate, and that can lead to innovation. But if you're not using criteria such as diversity in age, religion, gender, economic class in your hiring criteria, then you may want to reevaluate those. Point 5. What is the nature of meetings in your organization? Do meetings follow a strict agenda with the senior manager doing most of the talking? Or do they tend to meander around a bit with different people contributing and everyone getting relatively similar airtime? There was a Google study. Google studied its own internal processes to figure out which kinds of teams are the most effective. And what they found was that it wasn't about the skills in a given team, the talent that was available in a team. It was really much more about to what extent people in the team felt comfortable about contributing and speaking up. And so if your meetings are following the traditional definition of a well-run meeting, you may want to question that. Point 6, the importance of learning from failures. Silicon Valley companies talk a lot about the importance of failure. And it's not because they want projects to fail. It's because in order to innovate, you have to be able to experiment. And when you're experimenting, of course, you're going to have failures along the way. So the question you must ask yourself is, how often does your company review projects that have been failures and not just talk about successes? And think about what you're learning from those failures. At Indiginus, when we did a project with Bharat Matrimony, we ran through a large number of experiments. And most of them failed. And that was okay, because ultimately the learnings from those failures led us to do something that was greatly successful for them. Point 7, the importance of learning and evolving. It's critical that your employees are learning new skills in a world where there's rapid change, particularly in digital, where change is happening so fast today. So you have to ask yourself, are you encouraging that kind of learning within your employees? Are you allocating budget towards learning and online courses and other forms of education? If you do that, if you have a learning organization, you're also likely to attract the best talent that wants to stay on the cutting edge. Remember that technology is not just about upgrading your devices, it's also about upgrading your skills. Point 8, cross-functional communication. This is particularly important in the digital realm because often customer experiences get very compressed and end up spanning multiple functions within your organization in a much shorter time than they used to before. Let's take an example of this. If you're running a marketing campaign that drives leads for your offline sales team, it's very important that marketing and sales are talking with each other. The reason is that marketing may notice that certain promotions are more likely to deliver leads than others. And that's information that the sales team can use in trying to convert those leads to customers. Similarly, if sales is seeing that certain kinds of customers are buying the products more than others, they can communicate that back to the marketing team so that that information can be used in their marketing campaigns. So make sure that your functions are not operating in silos and are talking to each other. Point 9, upward feedback for managers. Whether formally or informally, does your company culture allow for people to speak up and contradict their managers and give them constructive feedback? The reason this is important is that if employees don't agree with the direction of a project, if they don't think that we're driving towards the point of innovation, they should feel free to speak up and express what they feel should be a different direction. But if they feel intimidated in doing so, then you're probably not going to end up with something that's truly innovative. Point 10, symbols of hierarchy. Do managers in your company get a lot of special privileges? They eat in separate areas, have designated parking spots, their large offices sit at one end of the building rather than being somewhere where they're more accessible to employees. All of these symbols matter because hierarchy communicates to employees that they should implicitly stick to their levels and their roles and not break out of them. And if employees are not encouraged to break out, then they're less likely to think laterally and come up with thoughts that might be outside their immediate areas of responsibility. So think about whether you want to break down those symbols of hierarchy. And in the next episode of Indiginus Talks, we evaluate and critique the digital execution of some companies in the health insurance sector.